Welcome back to AM Northwest. Actor John Candy will always be an icon in the world of comedy. A new biography details his journey from growing up to becoming one of the most beloved faces and comedic forces on stage and screen. Here to share more, we welcome the author of John Candy, A Life in Comedy, Paul Myers. Great to have you with us, Paul.
Hey, great to be here. I love being back in Portland.
You've loved John Candy since you were a young person.
Yeah. I mean, it was SCTV, the Second City television show. And I was a huge fan of Monty Python and then Saturday Night Live, and then SCTV comes on, and I'm from Toronto, Canada.
Right.
And they were making the show literally like 8 blocks away from my house. So there was an extra element for me of like, I recognized the voices.
Yeah.
You know, and John Candy just stood out from day one.
Oh my gosh, yes, so talented. And improv was also his thing. Like,
well,
he could really do it.
The Second City troupe had started out as a stage comedy troupe, and they learned how to improvise off each other. And you know, Catherine O'Hara and Eugene Levy were in that cast, and they still work together. And all those Christopher Guest films that those people are in, they learned how to do that together with John Candy.
What stands out to you? Well, first of all, why write the biography? Why was it important for you?
Well, my last book was about another Canadian comedy legend, the Kids in the Hall, who are less known maybe, but they were very, very influential to me. And I wanted to do another sketch comedy book. And then my editor at House of Anansi, our publisher, said, why don't you do John Candy from SCTV, and then you could talk about the movies as well.
Right.
So, so suddenly I remembered loving like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles and Uncle Buck.
Yeah.
But this is Planes, Trains, and Automobiles season now.
Well, we're looking at a poster from Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. That was one of the sweetest movies I think ever made. What stands out to you? I mean, it's an incredible, because how do you not love him there?
No.
And the line, "I like me."
Well, it's hilarious because, as you know, there's that documentary that came out, was working concurrently with me. We weren't working together. But the first prologue of my book is called I Like Me, because I identified that scene in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles where John Hughes wrote it for John Candy. But it could have been John Candy speaking from his heart.
Right.
He's talking about the fact that you can dismiss me as a buffoon. You can dismiss me as a person who goes too far, or loves too much, talks too much. But I like me, people like me, my wife likes me, my customers like me. That is such a great statement of acceptance for yourself and sort of demanding it of others, which is kind of how he lived. He had a lot of dignity.
He did. And it was really hard when the media, especially, focused on his weight and not his talent and who he was.
You know, there was not much talk about the term body shaming in the 80s, and boy, was it rampant. And a guy like John Candy was just immediately labeled as, quote, fatty this and all that. And it was, he acted like it didn't bother him, because he didn't want to let you know that it bothered him. And he also wanted to make you laugh, so he didn't care about showing how angry he was. So that internalization actually caused him to have anxiety later in life that he had unchecked, because we also didn't have mental health awareness. So a celebrity going through that whole thing, it must have been amplified so much, because people would say it in print, they'd say it to his face in interviews like this. They would say, so you're the leading man in Only the Lonely. Why is a guy who looks like you a leading man? And he'd look at the camera like he was, like as if he was on The Office. He'd go like, you guys getting this?
Yeah,
you know?
that was really hurtful. Dan Aykroyd did the opening tribute to him, and he talked about John's love of fine dressing and cars and throwing parties and great food, which I think a lot of people don't know that about him.
John Candy treated himself like he was special. Even when he was making like $200 a week, he would pick up the tab and people would go, how are you doing that? And he goes, I don't know, maybe I'll pay for it someday. Like, you know, like he would borrow money to look like, so he'd rent a limo, and nobody could afford a limo, but he'd just do it because he wanted to arrive in style. And there is something like dressing for success or visualizing. He seemed to always know that he was going somewhere.
He really, you mentioned earlier, gathered people who were talented like himself, and they stayed friends forever, because how do you not fall in love with him?
Oh, yeah.
So who stands out to you as some of the people that you talked to, in addition to Dan Aykroyd?
Oh, Martin Short, Catherine O'Hara. What a treat that was, because Catherine's also a legend. You know, Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks goes for like a long time in this interview talking to me. He's so excited to be talking about John Candy. And he was not excited to talk to me. Perhaps he was, I don't know. But I knew he was excited to talk about John. And he'd be like, let me tell you about John Candy, you know. And he sounded just like Tom Hanks, you know. It just blew my mind.
So when they did Splash together, it was pretty, what was it, the early 80s?
Yeah,
right?
Because both of them had really, and even Ron Howard, who directed that, who also talked to me in the book, they had just started out really, like in film. You know, Tom Hanks had done Bosom Buddies, and Candy had done smaller parts in other films, and SCTV, of course. And Ron Howard hadn't really established his company yet, and it was a big move for all of them. And Hanks at the time was more excited about the fact that he got to play opposite John Candy than anything, and he was starstruck. You know? Well,
because he was so talented, especially when you talk about improv and his ability to do that. There's a story that you tell about Jack Nicholson and John Candy. It is hilarious. So tell everyone about that one.
Well, okay, so there's a famous racquetball scene in Splash, if you've ever seen it, where, you know, he gets beamed on the head by his own rebound.
There we go.
And the thing about that is he's playing a guy who's hungover, and he's chain smoking, he's drinking beer on the court. In real life, the night before, he's at some Beverly Hills hotel, and he sees Jack Nicholson. Well, Jack Nicholson sees him and says, come over here, kid, have a drink with me. And of course, a drink with Jack Nicholson, especially in the 80s, was you'd be there all night.
Yeah.
So at 4 in the morning, he realizes he has to be at set in an hour. So he's still drunk, and he goes to the set. And they had rented this racquetball court, and Ron Howard tells me painstakingly that we had to shoot it that morning.
Right.
We had to shoot it. We couldn't get it was expensive. They closed down a racquetball court to do this. So he says, we got to do this. You got to do it. And luckily, he got it in the 3rd take. The ball hit him on the head, for real. Nowadays, they would just use computers, right?
Right.
But they literally did 3 setups, and he got it on the 3rd take.
And he was feeling so bad that it worked really well in the scene.
Absolutely.
He was hungover.
And that's the thing.
Or still drunk, whichever.
Yeah, I never understood that terminology. But yeah, so, you know, that was something where, you know, his indulgence rarely got in the way of his work. But he did like to eat a lot late at night, and those were the things that also, this kind of a sad subplot of the book is that he's constantly tamping down his body shaming, tamping down his anxiety. He lost his father when he was 5.
His father was just 35, died of a heart attack.
Yeah, so there's a heart history throughout his family. His brother had a heart attack and lived. And so there's that going against all that. But meanwhile, the guy shows up for work. And he's always funny, and he always cares about you. He always cares about everyone.
Such a people pleaser.
He is a people pleaser. Somebody said he was good even when no one was looking.
Wow.
And that is why can I just say I think he's a hero to me, because right now we need to model empathy, and cruelty is kind of getting a moment. And I think having a character like John Candy to celebrate kind of makes me feel good about humanity.
Yeah.
Am I overstating it?
No, I don't think so at all.
Is this morning conversation? But,
no, it's perfect.
But seriously, I've been talking about John Candy for about a month now, and I feel like I really think of him as a hero.
Yeah, I agree with you, especially when you talk about mental health.
Yeah.
He was such a people pleaser. Home Alone there was a part written just for him, right? And he did a full, like, 23 hours.
He was a favorite of John Hughes, who was producing Home Alone.
Oh,
Chris Columbus was directing. Catherine O'Hara was, playing the mom. And so he said, I'll do it. I only have 1 day. I can only give you 1 day. So they thought it was going to take 6 hours, maybe 7 hours. They did 2 setups. And the second one was supposed to be in the back of the van. And they're driving across country. And they just did improv after improv after improv. And for Catherine O'Hara told me that the hardest thing for her was that her character wasn't supposed to be funny.
Yeah.
So she had to not throw in the big jokes that she heard coming, like, because they're so good at improv. They've been doing that in Toronto like 10, 15 years earlier.
Yeah.
And so, Candy just throwing one-liners, and just coming up with new bits. And Hughes showed up for set that day with Columbus, and they're teasing him. They're saying, do this one now, do this one now. And they went to 23 hours. Candy gets in a car, goes back to the other film he's making at the time.
Wow, incredible.
Really excited to be here.
It's a great read. It's a great read.
Thank you. I really am proud of it, and I'm glad you liked it.
You loved it. All right, we'll be right back with more AM Northwest. Don't go away.